You sit before me with eyes that have seen too much and lips that tremble with unspoken knowledge. You do not yet fully understand the power you hold because you have spent your life making room for others inside yourself, clearing space in your psyche to accommodate their chaos, their hunger, their grief. You, the empaths exit the empath, have become the quiet sanctuary in a world of shrill demands. And yet, if you wonder why your silence feels like thunder to those who once ignored your cries, let me tell you a secret, whispered from the depths of the collective unconscious when the empath walks away. It is not out of cruelty, no weakness, nor resignation. It is an archetypal movement, a cosmic shift, the culmination of a sacred alchemical process. The empath's exit is not an act of vengeance, it is a revelation. For when the one who carried everyone's burden finally lays it down and disappears into stillness, those who fed on that warmth are left to shiver in the absence of light. You see, in every relationship, whether romantic, familial, or social, there exists unconscious dynamic, a dance of projections and shadows. The empath by nature absorbs what others refuse to feel. You do not merely listen. You merge with the pain of the other and call it compassion. But I ask you, what is compassion without boundary? What is love if it consumes the one who gives it? The empath's gift is also their curse. The boundary between self and other is so thin, so translucent that it becomes porous. The wounds of the world seep in, and for a time, if you believe this is your calling, to be the quiet anchor healer, the soother, the quiet anchor. But what you do not yet realize is that in this dynamic, you are often not seen. You are useful. You are nourishing, but you are not known. And therein lies the tragedy. There is a moment, a sacred and terrifying moment, when the empath wakes up. It rarely comes with anger or rebellion. It is quiet, like the realization that dawn has arrived while the stars are still dim in the sky. You begin to feel the dissonance, the aching distance between your inner self and the life you have built around accommodating others. You begin to hear a voice from deep within. It is not loud, but it is ancient, and it says simply enough, this voice does not speak from the ego. It is the self, what I have called the totality of the psyche, the union of conscious and unconscious, of light and shadow. When the self begins to stir, when the soul becomes weary of fragmentation, you can no longer betray your inner truth to sustain external harmony. You must withdraw, not out of punishment but out of necessity. The soul requires integration, and integration demands solitude to those around you. This exit appears sudden. They do not see the inner earthquakes that have preceded it, the years of suppressed pain, the tiny deaths of your authentic self. To them, you are always available, always forgiving, always kind. Your absence feels violent because it disrupts the illusion. It exposes the imbalance. And the empath, once invisible, becomes a mirror. But this is where the revenge lies. Not in cruelty, but in clarity. When you leave, you remove the anesthesia. Those who once leaned on your emotional labor must now confront the void. The silence becomes a magnifying glass. Your departure casts a light on the dynamics they refuse to see. It is not your intention to hurt, but your awakening forces them to witness their own shadow. Do you understand now? The empath's quiet exit is not an act of ego. It is the soul's return to itself. It is the moment when the unconscious contract, "I will carry your pain if you love me," is torn up. And when that contract dissolves, the entire architecture of the relationship crumbles. This is not just interpersonal. It is archetypal. It is the dismantling of the MA complex. It is a liberation from the archetype of the wounded healer. Let me take you deeper. Imagine a dream. You are in a house with many rooms, each one filled with people asking something of you. One needs comfort, another weeps, another rages, and you with open arms move from room to room, absorbing, soothing, fixing. But one day you notice a door you had never seen before. It is small, almost hidden. And behind it is a staircase leading downward. You follow it. You descend into the basement where no one waits for you, where no one calls your name. It is cold. It is silent. And for the first time you hear your own, the descent breathing. You see a mirror on the wall. You do not recognize the face. It is tired. But beneath the weariness is something more, something fierce, something eternal. You lean in and the image whispers, "Come back to me." That is the moment of individuation, the sacred turning in. Ward. The house above will collapse without your tending. Yes, the voices will call for you, but you do not return. You close the basement door and begin the real work, the integration of your true self. This descent is not a fall, it is a pilgrimage. The empire's exit is a descent into the self, and the world accustomed to your selflessness mistakes your sacred journey for betrayal. Now let us speak of shadow. Every person you saved projected their wounds onto you. Every soul you soothed used you as a vessel for what they could not bear to carry. But you also played a role. You accepted the projection. You took it as a form of meaning. In their pain you found your purpose. But this was not love. It was a contract born of the wounded child within you, who long ago learned that to be loved, one must be useful. To leave is to reclaim your soul from this ancient lie, and when you do, the archetypes begin to shift. The healer must become the healed. The giver must receive. The mirror must reflect inward. This reversal causes disruption in the psyche of those who once depended on you. They are forced to meet parts of themselves they had disowned. And some will hate you for it. They will call your exit betrayal. They will rewrite the story so that you become the villain. Let them. Do not argue. Do not explain. Silence is the language of transformation. When you walk away without a scene, without a scream, without a final plea, you break the spell. You refuse to perform the role. You become something terrifying to those still asleep, someone who no longer needs to be needed. And this, my dear empath, is your liberation. But beware, the loneliness that follows is real. You are not merely leaving others. You are leaving a version of yourself, the one who believed that love must be earned, the one who mistook sacrifice for connection. That self will grieve. Let it. Do not rush to fill the emptiness. For in that void, something sacred grows. You begin to dream differently. The symbols change. No longer are you chased or devoured. You begin to fly. You meet animals who speak. You walk through forests untouched by human sorrow. These dreams are not fantasy. They are messages from the unconscious. They signal that the psyche is healing. The revenge that your soul, long silenced, is singing again. And in waking life, you will notice strange shifts. The people who once trained you no longer find you. You become invisible to those who fed on your light. You attract silence solely to the synchronicity. And perhaps for the first time you begin to feel peace, not the peace of pleasing others, but the peace of knowing yourself. This then is the brutal revenge of the empath. Not rage, not confrontation, not punishment, but absence, a holy absence that forces others to confront themselves. A withdrawal so complete that it becomes a mirror. And in that mirror they see their hunger, they see the imbalance, they see the truth. But more importantly, you see yourself, and that dear soul is the beginning of everything. As you sit with this new silence, this white echoing spaciousness, you may feel unlike a child who has wandered too far from the village fire. You have spent your life tending that fire, keeping it burning for others, feeding it with your spirit, but now you are in the dark woods alone. And the stars are the only witnesses. Do not mistake this solitude for abandonment. Abandonment, it is the sacred wilderness of the soul. You must understand, every time you said yes when your body whispered no, you split from yourself. Every time you offered comfort while your own heartache you fractured a little deeper. Every time you absorbed someone else's pain in order to avoid conflict, you carved space out of your being and filled it with what was not yours. These were not small wounds. They were death by 1,000 soul cuts, and yet no one saw them bleed. Now that you've withdrawn, now that your exit echoes louder than your presence ever did, those same people begin to feel the absence, not because they loved you fully, but because your function has ceased. Your presence was never neutral. You were the unspoken support beam, the invisible emotional infrastructure. And now with you gone, the whole architecture begins to crack. They will not know what to call this sudden emptiness. Some will call it abandonment. Some will name you cold. Some will say you changed. But you and I, we know the truth. You did not change. You remembered. You remembered that love without self is martyrdom. You remembered that sacrifice without mutuality is servitude. You remembered that your life, your light, your peace were not born to be endlessly siphoned by those who fear their own darkness. Your quiet exit is a sacred return. Let us descend again into the underworld of symbols. For every soul in the world carries an archetypal pattern, a divine blueprint that speaks in dreams, in synchronicities, in instinct. The empath often carries the archetype of the wounded savior. You learned early, perhaps in childhood, that peace comes from fixing others, that safety is earned by being indispensable. This pattern lodges deep in the unconscious and repeats itself in every relationship. But here is the paradox. In saving others, you abandon yourself in healing others. You ignored your own bleeding, and the soul, your true self, your indwelling spark will not tolerate this forever. It will begin to rebel, first in whispers, then in dreams, then in breakdowns that feel like betrayal, but are actually breakthroughs. You may find yourself crying for no reason. You may begin to feel suffocated by spaces that once felt comfortable. You may begin to say no without explanation. This is not weakness. This is the birth pang of wholeness. You are being summoned back to yourself, and make no mistake, this return will cost you everything that was built on false identity, the friendships that depended on your silence, the family bowls that demanded your compliance, the love that only bloomed the return when you were hurting. These things will fall away. Let them. Do not try to explain your exit. It was not an intellectual decision. It was a movement of the soul, a tectonic shift beneath the surface of your psyche. It is the moment when the persona, the mask you wore to belong, cracks open and reveals the self. This self is vast. It does not negotiate with dysfunction. It does not barter with fear. It does not pretend. It simply is. And when you begin to live from this center, from this unshakable root, you will find that your energy no longer leaks out into the world without discernment. You will find that your presence becomes selective, so fine, even intimidating, not because you are cruel, but because you have remembered your worth. This remembering is the death of the old identity. And yes, there will be grief. Grief for the version of you who tried so hard. Grief for the years you spent explaining yourself to people who never really heard you. Grief for the loneliness that accompanied your compassion. Let yourself mourn, but do not regress. You are not who you were. You are becoming. Now let me speak of something few. Dare to acknowledge the shadow of the empath, for every light has its twin, and in every empath there is a shadow that whispers, "If I can feel their pain, perhaps I can earn their love." It is a dangerous illusion, one that turns compassion into currency, one that makes you betray yourself to avoid being alone. You must meet this shadow. You must face the part of you that is addicted to being needed, the part that confuses validation with intimacy, the parts that fears deep down that without service you are nothing. This is not an easy confrontation, but it is essential, because if you do not meet your shadow, you continue to recreate the very dynamics that drain you. You will leave one taker and attract another. You will end one-sided bond only to step into the next. Not because you are doomed, but because the unconscious is seeking completion. It repeats until it is resolved. So you must resolve it. You must draw the boundary not only with others but within yourself. You must declare, "I will no longer offer my soul in exchange for scraps of affection." You must be willing to feel the emptiness without rushing to fill it with someone else's chaos. On. Lising then does true transformation begin. There is a concept in alchemy called the nigrador, the blackening, the dark night of the soul. It is the phase where all structure dissolves, the nigrador, where the old identity dies and the new has not yet emerged. It is terrifying. It is necessary. And you in your exit have entered this phase. You are no longer who you were, but you are not yet who you are becoming. You are molten. You are becoming sacred fire. And yes, those who benefited from your old form will panic. They will try to lure you back with guilt, with accusation, with sudden affection. They will say you've changed. You must say yes. Thank God. They will say you used to be so kind. You must say I am still kind. But now I am kind to myself first. They will say I need you. You must say I needed me too and I was gone too long. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. And a clarity to those who live in illusion will always feel like betrayal, but do not let that stop you. For every step you take toward your own center, the world becomes more real. Your vision clears, your body relaxes, your dreams speak louder. You begin to recognize true resonance, not just comfortable. RT, not just familiarity, but truth. You begin to call back the parts of yourself you exiled in order to survive. The wildness, the author, the rage, the joy, the intuition. You are no longer a container for everyone else's story. You are the author of your own, and you begin to write it not with words but with choices, with silence, with boundaries, with presence. You no longer plead to be seen. You simply are. And those who can meet you in that authenticity, those who do not require your betrayal in order to love you, will begin to appear. But first the silence, first the stillness, first the shedding. That is why your quiet exit is so powerful. It is not an end. It is a beginning. It is the initiation of the empath into the realm of the sovereign soul. And yes, it will break the illusions others held about you. Yes, it will expose their dependency. Yes, it may feel like violence to those who only knew how to relate through control. But you cannot protect their illusion at the cost of your reality. You cannot be their fantasy if it means abandoning your truth, your truth. You cannot stay small so others remain comfortable. You are not here to be their mirror. You are here to be whole. And that wholeness, that silent, grounded, radiant wholeness, is the most brutal revenge of all. Not because it harms, but because it reveals. And what it reveals, they may not be ready to see the act of exiting. If we are to truly understand its mystical significance, is not simply the act of walking away. It is the severance of energetic cords that have fed others and drained the self for decades, lifetimes, generations. When the empath withdraws, they are not merely retreating from a room. They are reclaiming every piece of themselves that was scattered like breadcrumbs across the psyche of others. Every apology that was never necessary, every overextension masked as kindness, every inner no twisted into an outer yes. This reclamation sends ripples through the energetic field. The others feel it. Even if they don't know what they're feeling, suddenly they sense something missing. But it is not just you. It is the supply, the source. The stability you offered while they unconsciously took you had been a wellspring unspoken, unquestioned, and when you stopped pouring, they were left staring into a dry basin unfamiliar with the effort of drawing water from their own depth. The empath by nature has been the invisible alchemist in many lives, transmuting rage into reason, a sorrow into silence, shouts into calm. But this was a silent spellwork, the empath one you performed without acknowledgement, without protection, without balance. It was noble. Yes, but it was unsustainable. Even Chris, even the bodhisattvas, even the shamans of old retreated into solitude to commune with the divine. What right then? Do you deny yourself the same? And so the empath exits not to punish but to restore sacred equilibrium, to return to the cave of the self, to remember the origin of the light they so generously gave away. But the cave is not comfortable. It is not adorned with praise or recognition. It is not lined with the voices that once clapped for your compassion. No, the cave is silent. And in that silence you begin to hear the voices you buried long ago. The younger you, the wounded you, the sacred child, the forgotten dreamer, the one who stopped asking because asking felt like betrayal. These parts have waited patiently behind the noise. They now stir, and at first they do not welcome you. They are skeptical. They wonder if you have returned only to leave again, to survey again, to sacrifice again. You must earn their trust, not with penance, but with presence. You must sit with them in stillness. Let their rage burn through your bones. Let their grief drown the illusions you once called self-worth. This is the true initiation. To no longer find identity in being useful. To no longer find safety in invisibility. To no longer mistake enmeshment for intimacy. You begin to reorient around your own center. You begin to ask not what do they need from me, but what do I need from me? And that question unears a 100 more ancient, uncomfortable, liberating. What do I love when no one is watching? What soothes me? When no one is clapping, who am I? When I am not performing the who am I role of the empath? The answers do not come quickly. They emerge slowly like forgotten gods rising from the unconscious ocean. And with them comes grief. Not just for the people you've left, but for the self you left behind. The self who waited. The self who whispered boundaries and was ignored. The self who curled in corners after offering too much. That self deserves mourning. That self deserves ritual. So light the candle, bury a letter, burn the expectatio. NS. Let the past know you are no longer available for self-abandonment. In this transformation, your energy changes. Your very frequency shifts. You become unrecognizable to those who once read you like a manual. They cannot locate the guilt in your eyes anymore. They cannot trigger the savior in your soul. And they begin to panic, not out of malice, but out of dependence. They had never learned to walk without leaning on you. And now you are not their crutch, must let them. You are not their crutch. You are not their counselor. You are not their God. You are your own. The ego, of course, will tempt you. It will whisper, see how they suffer without you. Go back. Save them. But this is not love. This is control in the clothing of care. And you must resist the seduction of being needed. Not because it is wrong to help, but because you must first learn to help without losing yourself. That is the difference between love and servitude. Love says I am with you and I am still myself. Servitude that says I disappear so you can be okay. And your soul has chosen the path of love. This is the slow unveiling of power. True power. Not you must go through the fire domination, not manipulate. Ion, but sovereignty. The power to be whole in the presence of others. The power to feel their feelings without absorbing them. The power to say yes when it is true and no when it is kind. That is the empath's final form. Not the healer addicted to healing, but the mystic who walks in wholeness. But before you rise, you must go through the fire. Not the fire of others' expectations, but your own. You must watch as the false self, the agreeable one, the overly accommodating one, the peacekeeper burns. You must not flinch. You must stand in the flames and whisper, I bless the ashes, and in those ashes you will find gold. Union alchemy is not metaphor alone. It is psychic reality. The carcassation, the dissolution, the coagulation of soul, and your journey from empathic matter to embody itself is the very blueprint of that alchemy. You are dissolving the false metal of people pleasing into the pure gold of soul. This gold is not loud. It does not beg to be seen. It simply shines, and it repels what once strains your senses the shift. They do not understand it, but they feel it. They no longer reach for you with the same ease. Your boundaries once invisible are now energetic wall. Your silence once mistaken for passivity now speaks of power. And some will lash out, accusing you of hardness. But you are not hard. You are clear. Clarity is not cruelty. It is just rare. And because it is rare, it feels brutal to those who confuse excess with entitlement. This, again, is why you cannot prevent an acquired exit wound so deeply. Not because you wounded anyone, but because your wholeness exposes their fractures. Your refusal to play the role forces them to meet themselves, and that meeting for some will be unbearable. You cannot prevent it. You must not, for just as you had to face your shadows to become free, so must they. You cannot carry them across the threshold. You can only walk at first torch and hunt, and trust that your light will inspire, not rescue them. And perhaps when your responsibility is you they will do the same for someone else. But is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is you. And in choosing yourself, you offer the world the highest gift. Not your compliance, not your sacrifice, but your example. When you begin to live from your own center, not as a reaction to others, but as a declaration of being, you step into the sacred unknown. The empath, once she shackled to the moods, needs, and wounds of others, now becomes a sovereign agent of transformation, not through effort, but through embodiment. The quiet exit was never about punishment. It was always about permission. The permission to be real, to be whole, to self-erase or be free. And yet the world resists such liberation. Society teaches that the highest form of goodness is self-eraser. That kindness means compliance. That love demands exhaustion. But this is a distortion of the divine. True love rooted in the self is fierce. It has teeth. It bites through illusion. It protects its own flame so that it may warm without being extinguished. You dear soul are no longer interested in playing the savior. You have seen where that path leads to burnout, to resentment, to invisibility. You now choose the path of the sacred witness. You no longer dive into the ocean to rescue the drowning. You stand firmly on shore, anchored in your own breath, extending your hand only to those who wish to rise by their own will. This shift is not subtle. It is seismic, and those who have built their